Okay, so first of all, I'd like to introduce our panel. We have four, as I mentioned, amazing entrepreneurs. I'm just going to ask them a few questions and they're going to share their story and their experience with you. So, first of all, we have Mary Jane Copps immediately to my left. Welcome, Mary Jane. Nice to see you. Mary Jane owns a business called The Phone Lady. We have Allie Breen, who owns a business, Allie Breen Coaching, and also is a millennial career coach. We have Lori Cook, who owns an innovation consulting business. And we have Angela Dufour, who owns a nutrition and action business. So, first of all, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a question and I'll invite each of you to answer it. I'll give you a little idea of where we're going with this. We have 8 questions. We have an hour and 15 minutes. So that'll give you a thought on sort of how much time we have for each question. So, question number 1. And Mary Jane, perhaps we'll start with you, please. Please briefly describe the organization you work for or own and your position.
Okay, well, I am the CEO of a company actually called Telephone Talent Inc., of which the Phone Lady is part. And the company trains individuals how to communicate effectively on the telephone and how to have conversations. If you're thinking this is call center oriented, it is not. My clients are corporations throughout North America that want to have strong relationships with their clients. So they want their employees to have good phone communication skills. And this is its 13th year in operation.
Thank you, Mary Jane. And Allie, can you briefly describe your organization, please?
Sure. I'm Allie Breen and I'm a millennials career coach. I use story based narrative coaching to help people get clear about what they want and how and when they can actually go after it. And I operate from the definition of career that your career can and should be a reflection of who you are and how you want to show up in the world. And sometimes that's very counter to a lot of the traditional cookie cutter career advice that's out there. So I've been in business for 3 years, and that's just a little bit about me.
Thank you, Allie. And Lori, please.
So my name's Lori Cook, and I have a company called Chutzpah Consulting. I've had the company for a number of years, and I've used it off and on, mainly as a contracting company in between when I'm doing learning, development of opportunities, coaching, leadership development, nonprofit governance, a variety of things. But just this past year, I've decided to really focus on innovation. I think the market right now is really crowded in terms of leadership development and so on, but I think innovation is an area where a lot of people say they want to be innovative, but they don't necessarily understand what that really means. And a cornerstone for me of innovation is diversity and inclusion. I'm someone who lives with a disability myself, and so I believe that gives me a unique perspective on the importance of diversity and inclusion to innovation. And so that's what I try and help organizations do.
Lori, can I please ask you? We talk about innovation a lot in classes with our students, and sometimes it's difficult to define what innovation is. Could you please do that for us?
To me, it's any new and that could be incremental new or substantial paradigm shift new. More likely, it's incremental new. So, new ways of doing things, bringing in new perspectives, embracing new ideas, really being open to the other, really making sure that when an idea comes to you and it's different and you don't really understand it, that you lean into that idea and seek to understand before to be understood, and really embrace it, because that's where innovation comes from.
Thank you, Lori. And Angela, could you describe your organization, please, and your role within it?
Sure. I have a few different hats, a few different organizations, but I started my professional practice, my private practice in nutrition, mainly sport nutrition, probably 15 years ago now. I don't want to date myself. Graduate of the Mount. But I also work for the Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic and the Canadian Olympic Committee. So I love what Ali said about your career should reflect who you are. And I think that's truly what I think a lot of people will say about me, is that I'm pretty passionate about what I do, and that reflects in my work. So that's it.
Thank you. So question number 2. And this time, let's start with Allie, please. How has your career evolved? Are you doing what you planned to do today? So sometimes we call this your backstory. How did you get here?
Okay. So I I'll talk about this I think a little later in another question, but I'll just say that I started in theater. And there's a lot of pieces of the work that I do now where I do group work, or I do things like this, or I do a lot of workshops and those sorts of things where I do get to both perform and just perform to a level that is worthy of the people that I'm working for and that I'm trying to coach and that I'm trying to help, right? And so for me, when I was a child, I loved to write. And now I have parts of my career where I write all the time. I write a blog and I get paid to write blogs for other career professionals as well. I write resumes and I help people get their writing skills up to snuff so that they can write LinkedIn profiles, resumes, those sorts of things. So the answer is no, that my career is not where I thought it would be. When I started in university, I took 1 year of a theater degree, and then I completely changed all sorts of things about my life. I actually did an exchange in France, and that totally changed perspective for me. I spent a year doing what I loved and exploring what I loved. And that path has taken me in a bunch of different directions, and I've landed in a role that reflects all sorts of the pieces of my life and the things that I'm good at and the things that I like to pursue. And I get to touch on those probably at least once a week, if not every day, a little bit here and there. The next thing that happened when I opened my business 3 years ago, and this might happen to you, is that I had to learn digital marketing. I was always on Insta and that was fine, but I had to learn how to use it for business. And then I realized I'm actually a digital marketing nerd. I love how social media marketing works. I think it's really interesting. I love getting into all of the different parts of marketing. And I didn't even know I liked marketing. But when I look back on it, I like to convince people to do things, and I like to help people convince others to hire them. So marketing is completely in line with what I do in career development. So the most recent thing I did in my career coaching is I've been working with an organization in the States. They're the biggest career development association in the US. I'm consulting on their marketing and their branding right now. That's a direction I didn't think that my business would go in, but I jammed my foot in that door just by being really progressive in social media compared to the other career professionals in my field who are mostly just hanging out on LinkedIn. So I stood out in a way that got me noticed, and then I went for this really interesting opportunity, so that right now I'm a digital marketing consultant for the biggest career association in like our neighboring country, which is interesting. But also I have my private practice. So I get to do two things that I'm really passionate about. And I never would have thought that marketing was something that, if you had asked me when I first started my business, I did not think that was the road that I was going to go down.
Are you still acting or performing?
Yeah, every once in a while. I am a karaoke queen, so.
Thank you, Allie. And Lori, how's your career evolved? How did you get here? What's your backstory?
Extremely twisty. So I started out in journalism, went to King's, and worked as a journalist for a little bit. Also, in that process, I worked as a videographer. So then I moved more into film and television, starting with documentaries, then getting involved in helping to support the film and television industry here in Nova Scotia. So I did all sorts of different jobs, production manager and stuff, but I also used to direct music videos. So that was something else that was a little bit different. And then I ended up in doing professional development for an organization called Moving Images Group, that was an umbrella group for the film and television industry for training in Atlantic Canada. And then, so that got me into adult education. And then I realized, well, if I'm running a nonprofit, maybe I should learn something about nonprofit leadership or management. So then I did some courses and stuff at that at Dow. And then actually my life took a really dark turn in that I became very ill. I live with bipolar disorder, and I became very ill and was on disability for about 12 years. And I had to figure out a way, which it's highly unusual for someone who's been on disability benefits for more than 2 years, apparently, to ever make it back into the workforce. But I always had this in my mind that somehow I would make it back. I had to work. But in the meantime, actually, I did a ton of volunteer work that when I got ready to go back into the workforce was really useful. And I also, towards the end of my time on disability, I went back and did a master's of adult education specializing in community development. And that immediately then started to open doors in community development. I did a variety of jobs and contracts. So I had my own company start up about that time. And now I'm at a point, though, where I just turned 50, and I doing some midlife reflection on where I really want my company to go. I really want to focus on my own company and not looking for a job anywhere anymore. And in looking around, I really thought about what do I want to be doing at this stage of my life. And the big thing that came to me was I want to be doing cool things with cool people. And that's my mantra. And so that has opened up a whole range of opportunities of things that I would never have anticipated. Also, similar, I started writing a lot on LinkedIn. I learned how to use LinkedIn for business, not just for career development, looking for jobs, but actually how do you use it for business? Mm-hmm. And it's completely different. So I'd recommend you looking into that. But it really I started putting myself out there as me, as what I really believed in. Simon Sinek is a big influence of mine, and Seth Godin and others, but really the idea of being true to who you are and putting that out there in a very strong, unapologetic, genuine, authentic way. And the opportunities that have then been attracted to me have been amazing. Some really interesting collaborations, different things that are happening. And I'm also just on the volunteer front. It's interesting, my work and my volunteer life continue to intersect. I'm also president of the Canadian Community Economic Development Network nationally. And at some point, if there's time, I'd love to tell you about some of the amazing opportunities that we see for entrepreneurship in Canada coming forward because of new initiatives related to social innovation and social finance. So if there's time, I'll speak to that later, or you can approach me later.
Thank you, Lori. I'm always in awe with respect and admiration when someone is so vulnerable and open and honest in their share, because that's what enriches all the rest of us, right? So thank you for that. And Angela, please.
I think every entrepreneur has a twisted, turny path. I don't think it's always set the way when you exit university, as I always say, my last day of my undergrad course here at the Mount, I said, see you later, I'm never coming back. I'm still here. I teach here. I don't think and then my dad was talking last night about doing a PhD. I'm like, no, I'm done. But never say done. So yeah, my career has sort of evolved on a twisty, turny path. Started out a little, if anyone's in the nutrition program here at the Mount, the entrance into the post-dietetic internship program was quite challenging, and in the days of my graduation. So I wasn't successful getting an internship. I thought it was the end of the world. I was not going to be a dietitian. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? That's all I ever wanted to be and do. But like you, I actually did a master's in education, so I did actually come back to the Mount because I couldn't get my internship, and I thought, well, maybe I don't need it. Maybe I just need to expand my my skills, and instead of doing a master's in nutrition, I felt that nutrition, what we do, what we practice, is we're educating adults, we're educating children, and I knew at that point that's really what I wanted to do, and that was a piece that was missing. So so I came back to the Mount, did my master's in adult ed, and then I got my internship, funny enough, which was a great experience, although I knew I didn't want to work in a hospital, and back then in my day, that's where dietitians were, but I was kind of the black sheep of the crew, and I wanted to kind of carve my own path. So I became good friends with Pete Luckett, who had his original store in Bedford, and I knocked on his door for a year. So if this is like the persistence of any entrepreneur, actually I think it was over a year, and finally he took pity on this poor blonde-haired curly girl saying, please just let me have 10 minutes of your time. And he brought me in on, I remember it was Good Friday, there was nobody in the store, and he said, if you can make a position for yourself here, he said, it's all yours. He handed me a Produce Marketing Association book, and in the back had an index of all these different marketing boards, and said, call them, tell them you're working for me, which of course back then he was on CTV, so everybody knew him across the globe, and I made myself a position, and it was actually, I worked every weekend, I worked 15 hours probably a day. It was hard work, but it was a lot of fun. I moved actually into the food service world, which is kind of where I'm kind of carved my own little niche in terms of sport nutrition right now. So I was in sales and marketing with a food service management company who's actually here at the Mount, doing some marketing and healthcare and school sort of programs. And then I really had this burning desire. I felt something was missing. I was an athlete. I say growing up, I use that term loosely, and I still think I am to some extent, but working with Olympians, I'm not quite that title. But there was a burning desire in me to do something else. I've always been interested in sport nutrition. I did my master's practical study in athletic sports, and I decided to take the first course that was offered from the IOC in sport nutrition. It was a diploma course, and marketed myself again to the Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, who contracted me, took pity on me, I think, because I was persistent, to do some contract work with their athletes. So my career's kind of evolved to, building my private practice. I think all that past experience that kind of took the windy path really helped me become a more well-rounded overall practitioner, not just dealing with Olympians, but weekend warriors as well. And I think I could use some coaching from these ladies because I suck at digital marketing. So my business side of things, really, it's just nice to have. And what really I enjoy is the combination of all of the different hats that I wear. So
Thank you for that, Angela.
Yeah.
And Mary Jane, please.
The question is the backstory.
The backstory, how has your career evolved? Are you doing what you planned to do?
No, I'm not doing what I planned to do. So in October of this year, I celebrated 32 years of being an entrepreneur. So I started writing my own paycheck 32 years ago. And I'm pretty sure when I was in university taking English and theology, that wasn't my career path at the time. But I feel incredibly blessed. I think I was always, when I was working for other people, I was always a little bit of a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, and I was always too independent. When I look back, I was looking recently at some old employee performance sheets, and there was always that, she's just a little too independent. She's just a little too stubborn. And my brain works that I'm always coming up with new ideas and I want to try them right away. I don't want to necessarily go up the ladder and get approvals from somebody to try these new things. So inevitably that certainly led to my starting my first business way back in 1987 when I was 28. How did I become the phone lady? Well, in 2001, I sold my shares in my first business, and I was taking a bit of time off, and I was helping a friend grow his software business. And he had created some specialized software for physiotherapists in Atlantic Canada. And when I joined him, he had 3 clients, I think, and I worked for him 2 days a week for about a year and a half, and we got that up to 100 clients. And I looked at him and I said, okay, I got to go now. I got to get a job. And he said, no, you have to start another business. And I was like, what? Because that really wasn't my intent. I had built the first business to 16 people. It was a lot of work. And I really thought, no, I'm going to take a break from entrepreneurship. But he said, no. He said, what you've done here, you have to share with other people what you're doing. And he was very generous. He said, stay here, share my office with me, and start your business from here. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine, no problem. But just start it here. And I want to connect this with what Angela is saying, persistence. If you're thinking about entrepreneurship in any way, persistence is your key to success. Absolutely, 100%. So today, I own a company that is on its way to billing $500,000 in training people how to talk on the phone. That was not something I could foresee, right? And every day, it surprises me the opportunities that I have to simply work with people and help them understand the importance of live conversations with their clients and their prospects.
Only too true. I bet if we took a poll in this room as to how many of the students in attendance like to talk on the phone, it would be a small number, right? Yeah, we're moving away from that, so all too true. Thank you. Pardon me?
I just said I love the phone.
Oh, there you go. You like to chat then. Okay, next question, please. This will build on what has already been shared with us, and I'd like you to zero in and focus on something specific, perhaps share a story around it. What do you like about your work? What do you dislike about your work as an entrepreneur? And Lori, we'll start with you this time, please. What do you like about your work, and what do you dislike? And what's the story around it?
I think the biggest thing I like about my work is the diversity and the connections that come about and the opportunities for work that come about that I would not have expected. But by focusing on being myself, being true to what I believe in, what I think is important, and just being open to different opportunities, even when it doesn't seem clear at the beginning, but taking a chance on things and just experimenting, prototyping, right? Everybody's into thinking agile and so on these days, and that's really critical, I think. And I love that kind of unpredictability. Is also difficult though, because I don't necessarily know where my next check is going to come from. So there's challenges that way in terms of cash flow. One of the ways I'm trying to address that with some other consultants is a group of progressively minded consultants got together, and we're talking about forming a producers cooperative to be able to compete with like Deloitte and the bigger management consulting agencies, and to work on things together that we could not do by ourselves as smaller consultants, and also to find ways to have more influence. Get people thinking more about social justice, the planet, different ways of doing things. And so that's really important to us. And so that's something that's in the works right now. Another project I'm working on has to do with business succession in Atlantic Canada. So they're just amazing opportunities that sometimes come forward by just being yourself and being true to who you are. Being open to things, but you also have to understand entrepreneurship. Things can be kind of unpredictable.
So is it the unpredictability that you do not like?
Yeah, that's a challenge, the money side of things.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
I'd say it's the biggest.
Thank you. Angela, what do you like and what do you not like about what you do?
Yeah, I think definitely. Is that on? No, I didn't turn it off. the red light. It's very counterintuitive. So yeah, I like I work with a bunch of sports scientists. So collaboration is, I think, one of the most things I like. We come together, we come up with new ideas and how to get athletes to the podium. So I think in the end, that's what fires me up, and not just the athletes to the podium, but I get an email late last night from, a father of a 13-year-old boy who I saw, last week, and he was in the kitchen making energy balls, and he had a 4-game back-to-back tournament yesterday, and he killed it. And I was just as through the moon as I was in Pyeongchang when I saw the athletes on the podium that I work with. So, so that's always exciting. It's why we do what we do, and we had what's called an Olympic lab last year for Tokyo. We've got another one coming up, and this term really stuck with me. It's called ikigai, and if anyone knows, does anyone know what that means in Japanese? It's what's your purpose. So we had a whole day around asking athletes and coaches and trainers and sports science staff, what's your ikigai? What actually gets you fired up? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Is it the paycheck? Maybe not. Entrepreneurs might not know where that's coming from. What is it that makes you do what you do? And if you can't answer that in your current role or position, then maybe it's not the right fit for you. And yeah, so we had to do some deeper dives into why we do what we do. And everybody actually said it's to get athletes to the podium, but really when we look back on it, it's just to help them be their best, whatever that is, whether it's mental health, whether it's nutrition. So I like the variety. I take interns and students all the time, and you can tell right off the get-go if they're gonna fail or pass with me. I shouldn't say fail, nobody fails. But whether they find it really challenging, because some like that 9 to 5, I want to know exactly what my day is going to be like every single day. My best friend is the prime example of that. She couldn't do or live in what I do, which is, what's today like? Can I go for a run this morning, or do I have to work till midnight tonight? So that's kind of, that's what makes me tick. I love the variety, like I think most of us. What I dislike, I think it would have to be, as much as the collaboration is rewarding and challenge, or as rewarding, it can be as challenging as well. So I wouldn't say it's a dislike, but it can be very challenging. We're all over the world at all given times of the year. So making that happen via communication and telephone and having, active, purposeful conversations that way is really key. So, but it can be challenging.
Thank you. And that makes me think about our teamwork that we do in our classes. Great learning experience, also challenging, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mary Jane, what do you like, and maybe what do you not so much like?
Well, I like everything. When I look back on my working life, so I did, when I was working for other people, I had the opportunity to be a national real estate journalist for the Globe and Mail, and I loved that. I come from a very small town in Northern Ontario originally, so it was very cool to be working in Toronto at Bay and College on the 7th floor. It was all very wonderful, and everything that interests me in life is now part of my daily existence. I get to write. I get to work with a really wide range of clients. So last week, I worked with Grant Thornton, and I worked with a company in the US called Parnell that is creating leading edge medications for osteoporosis in dogs. I get to work for the Y, so I get to do a lot of not-for-profit work. I get to help people. I am part of the startup culture in Atlantic, Canada, so I get to be right there when an entrepreneur comes up with an idea that may change the world. I'm part of an organization called SheEO that Lori will be familiar with, and we help fund women CEOs that are coming up with ideas that will make a difference in terms of how our planet evolves. So how exciting is that? That's amazing. So what is challenging? I think that's the better word that we've all landed on. When you own your own business, there's no time off. It's really hard to say, well, today I'm just going to take the day off because whatever. There's always something that you could be working on, whether it's a proposal that's due at the end of the week, or whether it's the fact that cash flow isn't where you want it to be, so you should make some calls today to see if you can up the ante there, or you should be reading, you should be learning. So you carry being an entrepreneur is a lifestyle choice. It's not a financial choice. It is financially rewarding. So I want to make that clear. But you are definitely making a choice about how you're going to live your life. So when I'm out on the weekend, I was out at Neptune with friends, and some of them are retired and some of them are working for other people. And the conversation, while lovely, is much different than if I had been out with a group of entrepreneurs and gone to Neptune. So we'd be sitting around having pizza and drinking and really talking about the future and talking about ideas and innovation. And when you're with other groups of friends, you're just talking about, the latest books you read or whatever. It's great. But being an entrepreneur is very much a lifestyle choice, and that can be challenging.
So before we move on to Allie, I want you to think about what Mary Jane just said. Everything that interests me in life is now part of my daily experience. You want some of that? That's pretty cool. And Allie, what do you enjoy about your work and what do you find challenging?
I get to be a witness and a facilitator to people giving themselves permission to do exactly what you just said. That's one of the best things about what I do. So often we don't reflect on who we are, and we don't do that gut check work on what we really, really want so often. And then when we do, okay, great, but well, how am I going to make money doing that? Or, well, I mean, being a writer, that's just like useless. Or my arts degree, what am I going to do with that? Or whatever, right? So we put up all these roadblocks. Even if we do the work to figure out what we really want to do, we put all these roadblocks up. And sometimes they come from internal, sometimes they come from our families, sometimes they come from culture, sometimes they come from like a random article you read 2 months ago about how nobody makes money doing this thing that you love. But you don't really know that. You are a unique snowflake, and I know that that's a ridiculously silly thing to say, but you are. Nobody can do what you can do in the same way. There are a bunch of career development professionals in Halifax, but I do career development my very own way. I put my own spin on it. I'm sure there's lots of people that can teach companies how to be effective on the telephone, but the phone lady does it in her own distinct way. Same with these other women on the panel. And can I just say, I love being on an all-women panel. Okay, I digress. Here is the story. I had one of my first clients came in, they're like, I have to quit my job, I have to quit my job, I hate my job, I have to quit my job. And I was like, okay, let's just figure out why. And it's because in the current role that they had, they didn't feel like they were living up to their potential and they can be the person that they really wanted to be. In the job they had before, they had taken a risk and said, okay, I know I'm in an executive administrative position, but I would like to do some other more creative things with your brand and with marketing. And that company shot her down and then let her go like 2 months later for fit. So they did not want any of that glorious awesomeness that she had. In the current role that she hadn't figured out how to communicate the other things that she could bring to the table. She saw a clear need, but she had all this baggage from the other job and the way they had treated her. When she worked through that, she found a way to effectively communicate, here's a problem I see in the company I'm working for. Here's how I would like to address it. And yeah, it's not part of my job requirements, but I'd like to carve out a position for myself that would allow me to address that with you. And because I'm already internal and I already know how the company works, I'm the best person to do it. When she figured out how to communicate that effectively, she didn't actually have to quit her job. She came to me saying, I want to quit my job, but then she gave herself permission to do the things she wanted to do, to take the risk. She learned how to communicate that effectively, and it was awesome. And she's still working there, and she's worked her way up. just by giving herself the permission to go for it and figure out the best way to do it without shooting herself in the foot in the meantime. So that's what I like, is witnessing people give themselves permission. The second thing that I like is I get to connect people together. For example, I'm working with a client right now that would love to be a part of your group, your group of consultants. So we should talk later. That right there, that
I
happens
was
to me
thinking we
all
need
the
to have
time.
a phone.
Yeah,
We need to have coffee.
a phone chat. There you go. See, that happens to me all the time. I'm always looking for how I can make connections with people, with organizations, or with ideas or notions or whatever. So that connection piece is really nice. When I worked for other companies or nonprofits, especially, we have very strict rules about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do in terms of like non-compete clauses. And if I'm not the executive director of my nonprofit, I can't really be like, oh my God, you should totally work with our organization if I'm just the secretary, right? So as an entrepreneur, if I want to make a connection, I don't have to check with anybody. It's pretty nice. The thing I dislike, I have two dislikes, and I'll be concise. The first one is one that I've learned to get over because I've surrounded myself with other entrepreneurs. I have become part of the startup culture. I was an outsider, and then I put my foot in that door. The thing that I did not like was charging money. I came from a nonprofit world. I am a helping professional. It is hard to charge people money, but that is how you do business. And I had to figure out how to make helping also a business, if that makes sense. So me pressing send on an invoice before, it was awful. And now I know my worth, I know my value, and I know the value of my services is competitive with the other services that are similar to mine, okay? And I know that when I work with someone that demonstrates some sort of a need, whether it's I cut my rate to work with a nonprofit or to show up and do a workshop at a university, I know that when I write that invoice, I write the price I would normally charge, and then I write my like goodwill discount, because I want people to know how much I'm worth, even if I'm going to charge them a third. That's a really big lesson because you're the one putting the price tag on what you do. So I used to hate that, and now I'm like, I got this. And now I press send with confidence, which is awesome. And the last thing I dislike is I thought being an entrepreneur, I could do whatever I wanted. And that is totally true. And that's a problem. It's not something that's a bonus. It's actually one of my biggest challenges is I want to do all the things. And you really have to niche and delegate and make hard choices about the coffees you do have and the panels you do sit on and the places that you do show up and sometimes even the people that you choose to work with. And saying no and flexing that no muscle is, again, really hard at the beginning, but once you practice, it's like muscle memory. You'll know in your gut what you would love to say yes to, but you just don't have the room, or it just doesn't lead you to a path of joy or money or both. Joy, money, both. Both is like, just do it, right? But if it doesn't hit one of those two things for me in a really big blaring way, I just have to say no, even if it's a really great opportunity or a really great organization or a really great person. So yeah.
Thank you, Allie. Sure. Next, and we'll start with you this time, please, Angela. Can you tell us about what kinds of jobs or learning opportunities might be available for our students to consider as a career with your company, in your network?
Yeah, it's a great question. As an entrepreneur, we can't pay you, but you're more than welcome to come work with me and shadow volunteer. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I'm not really kidding. So I get emails all the time. I totally encourage students to get out there and if they don't answer, if the entrepreneur doesn't answer you in like 24 hours, don't take it personally. Send like 5 more emails, and persistence pays off. We will get back to you, but I do get a lot of emails. totally encourage volunteering. Again, if you see or find a niche when you get here and can sell yourself to me or to my business or even my contractors who I work with, that's how you're going to make a position. That's how I made a position at the Sports Center. That's how I made a position at Pete's Boutique. That's how I encouraged, and I still am encouraging the Olympic Committee to keep me on forever because I love that job, where it's only a 3-year contract or a 3 games contract. So I think networking is key. Get out there and volunteer. Those hours aren't worthless hours. They're definitely valuable. I also take interns, so internships are great. I just came back from a conference with colleagues in Toronto, and every nutrition program is different across Canada, and some will get interns for a week or 2 weeks, and I kind of discourage that because you're not getting much if you're coming for just a week or 2 weeks. Fortunately, at the Mount, we have our integrated program, which is about 16 weeks, or I stretch it as long as I can. And I've actually even taken an intern to 2010 Olympics. So because she was that great and she paid her way and she worked for me. So things can happen. But I think if you're looking for a paid paycheck right away, and if it's an area that you really truly believe in, and it is your ikigai, it's what you truly want to do, be persistent, get out there and volunteer, probably first and foremost, and then maybe there is a position at the end of the path. So.
Thank you, Angela. You've done a great job of providing some insight around how you might find an opportunity. Can you speak to what would be the opportunity? What kinds of jobs might there be in your industry, in your company?
Yeah, obviously private practice. A lot of interns will go right out and go into private practice. I kind of encourage to get out and get experience first, because it's all about education and counseling, and you really need some of those skills that the soft skills that you might not get in university. So positions in terms of like a sport dietitian, I think I actually just saw an ad for sport dietitian. 20 years ago that would have never existed. So don't look for the LinkedIn kind of business opportunities or postings, but looking at other ways you can kind of build that path or that position. As a student, I've hired 2 of my students already as entry-level sport dietitians who would work with kind of our development athletes, doing community education sessions in terms of whether it's varsity athletes or club athlete programs, which is great. And I had the same sort of challenge in charging some of these, non-for-profit or lower funded types of community groups. But I like the Goodwill discount. I actually wrote it down. I'm going to put that on my invoice. I love that. So it's starting out. It might be making smoothies in a recovery on the field of, the rugby players. It might be taking out the garbage in Canada Games. We've done it all, and it's not the glamorous, glorious kind of entrepreneur title that you all think you might wear all the time, but it's getting in the trenches too. So those are sometimes the positions that you start with and you continue with.
Thank you. Mary Jane, what kinds of jobs would students maybe find an opportunity for?
Working with the phone lady.
Yes.
I currently have a student working with me. She started with me, she's 24 now, but she started with me when she was 23. And she has a real passion for communication. And one thing I want to share with all of you, in case you're not aware, the largest companies, some of the largest companies in the world, have come out to say that before they look at your resume, they're going to judge you on how well you communicate. If you don't communicate well, you can't be a good team player. And if you can't be a good team player, you can't be a good leader. So communication skills are really, really vital. And that's our role, is to open it up both inside. A lot of companies come to us to help them improve their internal communications, because that can be where communication starts to break down. So what Miriam is currently doing for me is I've had for 13 years a training program called How to Pick Up the Phone as part of your job search to tap into the hidden job market. Now, this was not a course that I ever advertised or anything. People just came to me, and if they asked me, I delivered it. So it's all not for profit. It's the Y, it's Job Junction, it's Teamwork Cooperative. Those are the people that we do that workshop for. But I haven't been on a job interview since 1986. So I really wasn't the right person to be delivering this course. So Miriam's now in charge of that course, and she's selling it. She's picking up the phone. She's marketing it. She's created the online version of the course. So she's getting all that great experience at the age of 24, which is great. We are going to keep our eyes open for who we will add to the company next. So in a general way, if you want to be working for a startup or you want to be working for an entrepreneur, figure out what you can bring to the table. So the other workshops that I do, a lot of them are focused on customer service skills. Again, not call center oriented, but the people who answer the incoming calls or who are on the floor of a retail environment. How are they inspiring conversation with people, customers, and prospects? That's part of the customer service experience. So if you have that kind of background, maybe we can make room for you. But the other place that you can look at is every entrepreneur needs somebody in the background, somebody who handles their overwhelming inbox, helps them figure out some bits about technology, maybe helps them with digital marketing because it's such a big part of how our companies operate now. So I do have an executive assistant, I guess, in the background, but she works from home. She handles all my invoicing. She handles my calendar. She books my appointments. She communicates with clients about when I'm available, all kinds of things. And she tests out new technology for me before I take it on. So those are all possibilities in the background. And also, I encourage you, there's a lot, Futurepreneur now has a lot of support for what's called the side hustle, right? So if there's something you're really passionate about and you can do it, get it started with $50 in your pocket, hey, do it. The lessons that you're going to learn about entrepreneurship simply by creating your own side hustle are going to be amazing.
Thank you, Mary Jane. And Ellie, what jobs might be available with you or your business?
I'm going to answer the same way these fabulous women did, which is with a little bit of advice on how to go after it, and then I'll talk about what's available in my field, because my field is quite vast. So hear this. It's not always all about you. Hear that again. It's not always all about you. If you send an email and it gets ignored, that's okay, because you probably ended up in somebody's email box when they weren't even in the office, or they got 100 other emails that they deemed were more important. Be persistent. We've said that. I always recommend that people approach in two different ways, whether it's an email and a DM through LinkedIn, whether it's, usually I say, pick up the phone first. You'll love me for this. Pick up the phone first. And if you get a voicemail, which you probably will, because most people do not pick up their phones, but if they do, yes, be prepared that they're going to pick up their phones. But if they don't, leave a mini pitch on their voicemail and say, and I'm going to follow up with an email. And then write them an email saying, like, this is why I want to talk to you. This is what I'd like to deliver. This is what I think I can bring to the table, right? If you do that and your email is well written, someone will look at your resume, or they will look at that amazing reference letter you might have attached to that email. They will actually think about picking up the phone and calling you back. You could have the best resume designed by, like, Maureen Farmer is here in Halifax. She's like an award-winning resume writer. She could write the best resume for you. You have one typo in your initial email where that resume is attached, they're not going to look at it. So be really conscious about your communication and be persistent without being a jerk. So if you send one email and you don't get a response, send a second one and follow up. Follow up is something that most people don't do, but it's the thing that usually gets you the conversation, the interview, at least somebody looking at resume, those sorts of things. So I'll say that. I'll also say if you are interested at all in this kind of a job, there are a lot of information sites under labor market information where you can look at related occupations. So maybe social media manager is a job title that you're super attracted to and you want to know what are the other job titles out there or related occupations to that. Take a look at that list of related occupations and then do a deep dive into what those all mean. Because you might think that social media manager is what you want to do, but actually what you want to do is be creating content and writing. And you don't want to have to deal with like data and analytics, right? And so those are very different jobs in the same field. Now I'm going to answer your question.
Quickly, please.
I'll be really quick. So the field of career development is really vast. And if you're at all interested in helping people find meaningful work, I encourage you to think about my field. You can work with kids in elementary school. You can work in private practice like I do. You can work at centers that are nonprofit like Job Junction. You can work with people that have been incarcerated and need to get back into the workforce. You can work with persons with disabilities that are getting back into the workforce. You can work in higher education at the Career Center at the Mount. There are lots of different opportunities. And in my field, one of the best things is that people come from all walks of life. I don't have a master's of anything. I do not have a master's of counseling at all. And I'm probably never going to have a master's of counseling because that's not, I don't want to be a career counselor. I'm a career coach, and there's a difference there. But there's room for everyone. There's very little elitism in my field. Everybody comes from different walks of life. And so we're not at different levels. I'm as equally respected as someone who has a PhD in counseling, even though I don't have that degree, if that makes sense. So it's a really interesting field. It's very vibrant and it's moving. It's moving into the 21st century, which is nice. Yeah.
Thank you. And Lori, what kinds of jobs would be available in your business or organization for students?
So the field I'm focusing most these days is on innovation. And I think there are tons of opportunities, and I'm just curious, how many people are thinking after they finish school of being an entrepreneur as opposed to looking for a job?
Just for us in the front
Few
of the room,
hands.
there's only
Yeah.
a few.
So the thing is, and I can understand that, because I think one of the biggest challenges is finding the confidence to go out and be an entrepreneur, right? So a lot of people feel like, oh, I got to pay my dues, I got to get a job, all this kind of stuff. Right now, for instance, actually, and possibly in the next 2-3 months, I'm looking to hire basically a technology person. So I'm looking for someone who can get all that techie stuff that I'm not very good at anymore at all. But I need someone who can learn technology, not someone who's been trained in specific platforms and so on. So someone who's very good at teaching themselves how to learn different technological platforms. For me in particular, I'm interested in different online learning platforms and creating more products and services online. And also, though, I wanted to mention in relation to sort of the network, I think so that's a key strength that I think you guys have that you may not realize how strong an asset that is your ability to learn new technology as it comes into play, because us older folk ain't very good at that. So that's a huge asset. The other thing is to realize that networking is critical. And I'm not talking going to some schmoozy reception and handing out, I don't even have business cards, really, because anyone, once they know my name and they remember I'm about innovation, they can find me on LinkedIn like that, right? So to be honest, I'm always in awe of these beautiful cards that people come up with, but most people find me on LinkedIn, and having a really, really good profile, whether you're looking for a job or whether you're looking to launch a business or a side hustle, understanding how LinkedIn works, I think is critical, because that's B2B, right? The other thing is to know about programs like the Connector program that the Halifax Partnership has. And it's not a mentorship program, it's a connector program. So, what you do is you call them up and say, I'm interested in learning more about this. And that's a standard line when you're networking. I don't say, I don't pitch myself to anybody. I want to learn about them. So the key question is you want to learn about who that other person is, and then see if there's some alignment between what your interests are and what their interests are. But the connector program is great because as a student, you can call up and say, I'm interested in broadening my network in this area. And they will hook you up with one person like me who will have a conversation with you and then I would introduce you to 3 other contacts in my network that I think might be of particular interest and value to you. And that's all the commitment is. So it's a very low level volunteer commitment and yet potential huge high impact for people. And they're looking at developing a specific African Nova Scotia stream. They have a newcomer stream. They're also looking at developing a specific First Nations stream. So definitely I would check that out. But also to understand how networking works and that it's not about you, really, other than you need to understand people around you who are in the field that you want to be in, and also realize that you have assets and things to offer. And the idea is you want to find ways to align what you have to offer with what they need. So, classic business term, what are their pain points, right? What are their challenges? And then do you have something to offer that could help deal with that pain point or that challenge? That's key. And that's whether you're looking for a job or you're launching a business and looking for clients.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, we're running short of time. I'm going to give you a little bit of help, especially the students in my class, that we're supposed to think about what really resonated here with you. And while we do that for a quick minute, I'm going to challenge the panel to do the following. And we'll start with you, please, this time, Mary Jane. So, in 2 minutes or less, give us a list of words, just a list of words without any background stories, if you will, please, just so we can get through this before our time is over. What personal and professional qualities or attributes do you think are necessary to be an entrepreneur? A list of words. Or to start your own business. And also sum up with a sentence or two of the most significant advice you'd like to leave the students with today. So, what attributes or qualities, personal and professional, do you think are required to be a successful entrepreneur? And what words of wisdom would you like to leave the students with today? Okay, in 2 minutes or less. And while you do that, I want to tell you some of the highlights of what the panel has said to us. Persistence is key. I work with a lot of very high growth businesses, and I work with a lot of students, and I enjoy the spectrum between the two. And I would challenge that most of what the panel has shared with us today about entrepreneurship would apply to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is working as an innovative, customer-focused, value-driven employee for any corporation or business. So, although we are talking about entrepreneurship, it would apply to entrepreneurship or any job you might want to get, is really the point. Persistence, twisty path. It's not a straight linear ladder, it's a swirly, swirly tree with lots of different branches. Be authentic. Focus on what the market is demanding. They are the people who are going to pay you for whatever you're selling. Be focused. Be targeted. Know your purpose. And be creative. I think one of the most significant things were said here today is, and I think maybe Angela said this, is you have to earn your meal ticket. It's a competitive world out there. So whether you work for an entrepreneurial business or a large corporation, they're going to be focused on you earning your contribution. So we really need to think about that. It's not about us. It's about how to earn the contribution, which is supplied by the customer, right? So it's all about the customer. I love the side hustle comment. And I also wanted to say you're hearing a lot of passion here. Find your passion. Find your purpose. It's a long life. And whatever you do when you finish school will not be what you're going to do in X period of time in the future. So just start and make your way along that twisty path. So, what attributes and qualities, personal and professional, and what's your words of wisdom? 2 minutes or less, please, because they're going to get up and leave when it's time.
Okay, so when I give my list of words, can I add anything after the word?
You bet.
Okay, so we've already said persistence. Persistence is key in life, whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or not. And sometimes you think, oh, I can't follow up anymore. Please remember that all of us want to work with people who are persistent. If you've ever had a health problem, you freaking want that doctor to be persistent, right? You want the people you work with to be persistent. So showing that you're persistent means a lot to your clients and to a future employer. You must, if you're going to do entrepreneurship, you must embrace sales. Do not pretend that you can start any business without understanding that sales is part of it. And I don't mean sales as in Glengarry, Glen Ross, or the Wolf of Wall Street, okay? I mean that you're able to talk to people, you're able to uncover their pain points, their challenges, and offer them a solution. It's up to them if they say yes, but you have to have the ability to communicate that you have an option. You need to be flexible, okay? Every day is not a cookie cutter day. You need to have focus, you need to have energy, and you need to be a great listener. And I really encourage all of you to find ways to test your listening skills. Listening goes far beyond sitting and listening to me talk while thinking about what you're going to do at a 1:45, right? You got to really dig in. You have to be consistent. You can't do it one way on Monday and then the client comes back and you're offering it to do a different way. You have to keep your word. You have to be passionate. And you have to be a lifelong learner. The first business I started was the first online directory for journalists to do research in North America. I started that pre-internet. So think of the things I have had to learn in my career, right? And just in the last 10 years, 8 years, whatever, digital marketing. You always have to be learning. So my word of wisdom is the future is entrepreneurship, because the job market is changing so drastically. So if you've got an idea, try it, right? Don't be afraid to maybe fail, whatever that means. You know what? When you succeed, you don't learn anything. When you fail, you learn something. And that means you can go on and do something great.
Excellent. Thank you. I agree 100% with everything you just said. Thank you. Allie, in 2 minutes or less, your list of qualities or attributes. Oh,
Okay, I have honesty with yourself, with others, with the people that you're asking for help. First year of business, I made a big mistake. I asked Mary Jane about what I should do, and her simple answer was apologize, offer them something else. I knew that was the answer, but I was honest, and I got that feedback from someone who had been in business forever, and that I carry with me, that sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. So honesty with yourself, with the others around you, and with how you're able to show up for the people that you are doing business with or for. Build foundations and then feel free to tweak them. Mentorship is powerful. Gut check often. Be okay with the mistakes you made and move on from them. Don't carry them with you. Network after the event, not just during the event, after the event. Ask for help and then help in return, even in a small way. Even if it's an article that you see that talks about something that they talked about, send that along after someone has helped you, or just send a thank you. That can go a long way. Do the work. Just showing up day to day is a discipline in and of itself with entrepreneurship. So do the work and go after the money. Again, joy, money, or both. Sweet spot is both, but go after the money. There are lots of things you could do and that you will get asked to do. Go after the money, go after the money. And then the last thing I will say is ditch imposter syndrome as much as you possibly can. 3 years in business, 32 years in business, I knew showing up that you guys would get value from both of us. Doesn't matter how little you might bring to the table as a junior entrepreneur. you bring a whole wealth of perspective and experience that is completely different than someone who started in 1987. So ditch imposter syndrome. And then my very last word would be just show up. Bam.
Excellent. Thank you, Allie. And I agree with that. I learn something from my students every single day. So if you're open to that, Lori, 2 minutes or less, what's your list of qualities and attributes, please?
Just building on that, be confident, but also be humble, right? Know that you don't know everything, but that you do know some things. And so be confident that you do have something to offer. Be passionate. Sales is not a pitch, it's a conversation. Always be open to learning. Lean into diversity and the value of that. Think about what you have to offer that's unique. So same sort of thing, the snowflake thing. Read a lot of books. I highly recommend Simon Sinek's new book, Seth Godin's Tribes. I highly recommend. YouTube videos of Shimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Highly recommend. She's done all sorts of graduate speaking speeches and great perspective. Be flexible. Be open to partnership and collaboration and finding new ways to do things with others that you might not be able to do on your own. Don't be afraid to fail. Someone said it's the first attempt in learning. Be persistent in what you really want to do. And remember, tech is a huge opportunity for you guys. If you can learn new technology quickly, and I'm not saying go to training programs. I mean to have the ability to teach yourself new technology. That's hugely valuable. Take time to reflect who you are and who you want to be, what the difference is that you want to make in the world. Don't just be about the widgets. Don't just be about the money. Figure out what you really care about and focus on that. And be prepared to pivot. It's never going to be a straight line. It's never going to be easy. You need to be able to make changes as you go through life.
Thank you, Lori. And Angela, please.
I love going last because everybody has said all the same things that I would say: risk taker, mentorship, leader, be a good communicator, whether it's social or interpersonal. Work with integrity. It's part of our value system at the Sports Center. Be innovative. You have to be innovative. You have to be marketable. Market yourself. Be able to pitch yourself or your ideas to those and make those connections. Self-directed. Often when you enter into entrepreneurship, you're kind of working in silos, and I think that was a challenge that I found way back when I first started was how do I continue my PD, my professional development? So part of that is being a good leader, but also being able to be self-directed and being flexible, good listener. I go back to your ikigai, and that can change. So doing that self-reflection on a daily basis, is this connection working for me today, right now? If it isn't, then you move on. Sometimes it means saying no, and that's a hard thing to do when you're so used to being in the helping profession and want to do it all. So you can't do it all. You might, but you might burn out too. So being able to have that self-reflection often is key.
Thank you, Angela. So some wonderful words of insight shared here today, students. A quick list of perhaps some of the highlights. Be vulnerable. Figure out what your value is. Support to learn. Show up and work hard. Earn your way. Make a contribution. Failure is growth. Tech is a big opportunity. Always pivot. There's a lot of pivot. Work with integrity. Be innovative. Focus on your customer, whoever that is, the person you're serving in the role you're playing. Be self-directed and know your purpose. So with that, I'd like to thank our panel for giving us some of their very, very valuable time today. And I'd like to really encourage you to think about what they've shared with us. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone. Mary and wants to tell us what's next.
I'm going to add one quick thing in because we've talked a lot about networking. So everyone in this room should be connecting with each of us on LinkedIn, okay? Our connections are now your connections.
Or Insta.
So get connected.
Or Instagram.
Or Instagram.
I hang out there the most.
Okay, I'm stamping down at the back. Make sure your passports are filled out, your surveys are filled out. If you're looking for a passport stamp, and everybody exit out the back door down here.
Miriam said if you're looking for your stamp, go to the back of the room. Everybody exit to the